My parents always made it clear that my sister Bethany was their real investment. I was 12 when she was born, and my mom Louise had been told she probably couldn't have more children, so when Bethany arrived, she became the family miracle. Everything shifted after that. My room became the guest room when I left for community college at 18 because Bethany needed a bigger space for her activities. My savings for a car went toward her private school tuition because public school wasn't good enough for her. Every family decision for the next decade centered on one question: what does Bethany need? I never fought it because honestly, I thought that's just how families worked. Some kids are the stars and some kids are the supporting cast. My dad, Ewan, would tell me that being a good older brother meant sacrifice. And I believed him because I was an idiot who wanted his approval. Yo, this is the kind of psychological warfare that doesn't leave bruises but absolutely destroys a person from the inside. This man internalized some kids are stars, some are supporting cast, like it was a natural law of the universe, like gravity, like taxes. And his dad out here weaponizing the word sacrifice, teaching his son that love means erasure. That's not parenting, that's conditioning. You're not raising a son, you're manufacturing a servant who thanks you for the privilege. The fact that he calls himself an idiot for wanting his father's approval? Nah, bro, you were a child. Children are supposed to want their parents' love. The idiot is the grown man who exploited that. The Christmas before last changed everything. I was 26, working as a site supervisor for a construction company, finally doing okay for myself. We were all at dinner, and my mom brought up their estate planning. She explained that they decided to leave the house entirely to Bethany because, and I swear this is word for word, I would just sell it, but Bethany would actually appreciate it and raise her future family there. I asked what I was getting, and my dad laughed and said the house was the only real asset, so probably nothing substantial, maybe some furniture. I sat there processing this and asked if they thought that was fair, given I had been helping them with repairs and maintenance on that house for 3 years at that point, every other weekend. Free labor because they were family. My mom said I shouldn't have expected payment for helping my parents, and that attitude was exactly why they couldn't trust me with anything valuable. My dad added that Bethany had a nurturing soul, and I was just too practical and cold. I need everyone watching to understand the audacity of this math. This man gave 3 years of free skilled labor. We're talking construction work every other weekend. And when he politely asks if maybe that earns him something, they flip it into a character flaw. That attitude is exactly why we can't trust you. You know what that is? That's the move of someone who got caught being unfair, and instead of owning it, they make you the problem for noticing. It's Manipulator 101, and calling him practical and cold, while Bethany has a nurturing soul. Bethany hasn't nurtured anything except her own comfort zone. They're literally describing their workhorse as cold because machines aren't supposed to have feelings, right? Then Bethany, who had been quiet, said, maybe they could leave me the shed in the backyard since I like tools so much. She laughed. They all laughed. Something clicked in my head, and I realized I had spent 26 years auditioning for a role I was never going to get. I said okay, got up, grabbed my jacket, and left. My mom called after me, asking where I was going, and I said home, because I had work in the morning. That was the last real conversation I had with any of them. I blocked them for 2 months, but then unblocked them because I wanted to see when they would reach out. I stopped going to family events. I stopped the free maintenance. I started putting every extra dollar into my own future instead of their projects. I got promoted twice. I moved into a better apartment. I started dating someone great. And I waited because I knew eventually their perfect little family structure was going to need something from the guy they threw away. 11 months later, my mom sent me a text saying they needed to talk urgently about a family situation. She said it was about the house. I waited 3 days before responding. What I found out when I finally called her back made every sacrifice, every ignored birthday, every moment of being treated like the family handyman finally makes sense as preparation for exactly this moment. But I need to explain what happened with the house first and why Bethany's perfect life was suddenly falling apart. That's where this gets interesting. Maybe they could leave me the shed since I like tools so much. And they all laughed. Family dinner turned into a roast of the guy who's been keeping their house from falling apart. Here's what kills me. Bethany is 20 here, not a child. She's a whole adult choosing to mock her brother at his lowest moment. Don't tell me later she didn't mean it, or felt pressured. You're 20. You know what cruelty sounds like when it leaves your mouth. But that line, I realized I had spent 26 years auditioning for a role I was never going to get. That's the moment. That's the awakening. Some people never get that clarity. They spend their whole lives chasing approval from people who already decided they weren't worth it. This man woke up at 26, walked out, and started building for himself. 11 months of silence, 2 promotions, better apartment, great girlfriend. He didn't just leave, he became someone who didn't need them. And that's when they came crawling back. Because abusers always notice when you stop being useful and available. Update 1. Alright, so I went to see them last Thursday after work. Drove to their house, the same house I spent hundreds of hours maintaining for free. I wasn't nervous going in. I had spent 11 months getting stronger, getting promoted, saving money, and thinking about this exact moment. Every time I got a raise, I thought about how they called me worthless. I pulled up and noticed the gutters I had cleaned twice a year were clogged. The fence I repaired was leaning again. The garden my mom loved was overgrown because guess who used to maintain it? I sat in my truck just looking at evidence of what my absence meant. My mom answered and immediately started talking about how thin I looked and why hadn't I responded sooner. Not hello, not I missed you. Just criticism mixed with fake concern. Classic Louise. We sat in the living room and my dad came in looking tired. Bethany wasn't home. She was at her boyfriend Lola's place. My 20-year-old sister has a boyfriend now who she spends most of her time with. That becomes relevant later. My mom explained the situation. The house has foundation issues, cracks in the basement walls. A contractor said repairs would cost between $40,000 and $60,000, and without fixing it within a year, the house loses most of its value. They don't have that money. Their retirement took a hit and they've been helping Bethany since she dropped out of college last spring. I'm obsessed with that image of him sitting in his truck, looking at the clogged gutters, the leaning fence, the overgrown garden. That's not just a neglected house. That's a monument to everything he used to do that they never valued. They really thought the house maintained itself. They thought their son's labor was just background noise. And now, reality is screaming at them through cracked foundation walls. And of course, Bethany dropped out of college. The miracle baby who got everything handed to her couldn't hack it when things got difficult. Because when you're raised to believe the world arranges itself around your needs, you never develop the muscle to push through hard things. That's not even shade. That's just cause and effect. I asked why they were telling me this. My dad said because I work in construction and must know people who could do the work cheaper. Or maybe I could organize repairs myself since I had the skills. The same skills that made me only worthy of inheriting a backyard shed. I let the silence stretch. Then, I asked if they remembered Christmas when they said the house would go entirely to Bethany because I couldn't be trusted. My mom said that was different. That was about the future. This was about now. And family helps family. I asked where family was when my college fund went to Bethany's private school. My dad got defensive, saying they made the best decisions they could. And I was being childish. I told him I wasn't holding on to anything. I was finally seeing clearly. They raised me to be their backup plan and now expected me to come running. My mom tried saying Bethany was struggling too, and didn't I care about my sister? I said Bethany laughed when they offered me the shed. I said she never once checked on me in 11 months. Then I stood up and told them I would think about whether I wanted to help. I wanted them to sit with uncertainty the way I did my entire childhood. That was about the future. This was about now. I need that quote framed. That's the narcissist's national anthem right there. Translation: our cruelty was theoretical, but our needs are immediate. They want him to separate the past from the present because the past makes them look bad. But consequences don't work that way. You don't get to spend decades treating someone like garbage and then hit reset when you need them. And the dad calling him childish for bringing up the college fund? Sir, that's not childish. That's receipts. He's not throwing a tantrum. He's presenting evidence. You can't dismiss someone's legitimate grievances as immaturity just because addressing them is inconvenient for you. That's what people do when they have no defense. But here's what changed everything. Ashley had been texting with my mom while I was there. My mom had gotten Ashley's number from my old Instagram posts. And what she told Ashley made me realize this was way more complicated than foundation repairs. Update 2. So here's what my mom told Ashley in those texts. She said I had always been difficult, that I resented Bethany from birth, and that my leaving at Christmas was proof I only cared about money and inheritance rather than family bonds. She asked Ashley to please talk some sense into me because they were desperate and I was being cruel by making them wait. Ashley showed me the messages and asked if any of it was true. Had I really resented my baby sister her whole life? I explained the actual history, the college fund, the room, the years of free labor, the shed comment. Ashley believed me. But here's what made me furious. My mom was trying to recruit my girlfriend against me. She was building a narrative where I was the villain before I even made a decision. I decided right then that I wouldn't just refuse to help. I would make sure they understood exactly what they lost when they threw me away. This is where mom revealed she's not just clueless. She's strategic. She stalked his Instagram, found his girlfriend's contact info, and launched a preemptive strike to paint him as the bad guy. That takes effort. That takes planning. You don't accidentally manipulate someone's partner. You do it because you know your version of events won't survive contact with the truth, so you need to get there first. And the narrative she chose? He resented Bethany from birth. She's positioning a 12-year-old as the villain of this story, a child who lost his room, his college fund, his parents' attention, and she's the victim. Louise isn't confused about what happened. She knows exactly what she did. She just thought she could rewrite history before anyone compared notes. The next few days, I made some calls to contractor friends, not to help my parents, but to understand their situation better. Foundation work in their area was expensive, and most reputable companies were booked months out. My parents had limited options and limited time before the damage got worse. Then Bethany finally reached out. She texted me Sunday morning asking if we could meet and talk, just the two of us. I agreed because I wanted to hear her side. We met at a parking lot near her boyfriend Lola's apartment complex. Bethany started by saying she knew things were complicated, but she never asked to be the favorite. She said our parents put pressure on her too. Expectations she never wanted. I asked her why she laughed about the shed then. She said she was nervous and it came out wrong and she felt terrible about it. I told her that was convenient timing for her guilt to show up right when they needed something from me. She got defensive and said I was always like this, always keeping score, always acting like everything was a competition. I said it wasn't a competition when one person gets everything and the other gets nothing. I never asked to be the favorite is technically true and completely irrelevant. Nobody's blaming a baby for being born. We're blaming the 20-year-old who laughed at her brother's humiliation and then went silent for 11 months. Bethany wants credit for not choosing the favoritism while actively benefiting from it and doing nothing to challenge it. That's not innocence. That's complicity with plausible deniability. And you're always keeping score? That's what people say when the score isn't in their favor. When you're winning, it's not keeping score. It's just life. The moment someone points out the imbalance, suddenly, they're the obsessive one. Funny how that works. Then she told me something that shifted the whole situation. She said our parents had already borrowed money from Lola's family for the foundation repairs. $15,000 with a promise to pay it back within 6 months. But now they couldn't make the payments and Lola's parents were threatening to demand immediate repayment. If that happened, Bethany's relationship would be destroyed because Lola's family already thought she came from trashy people. So now my parents weren't just asking for my construction expertise. They needed money. And they were too proud to admit it directly, so they sent Bethany to soften me up first. I asked Bethany why I should care about her relationship when she never cared about mine with our parents. She said because she was my sister. I said being siblings meant nothing if there was no actual relationship behind it. I left her standing there and drove home. But I wasn't done. I had spent a year preparing for this moment, and now I had information they didn't know I had. They owed money they couldn't repay. The house was falling apart, and they had burned their only bridge to someone who could actually help. My next move required talking to Lola directly, and I knew exactly how to find him. So the real ask finally surfaces. They don't need his construction skills, they need his money. But they were too proud to say that directly. So they sent Bethany as the opening act. Soften him up with sibling guilt, then hit him with the actual number. That's not desperation, that's a strategy. And Bethany agreed to be the delivery mechanism, which tells you everything about whose team she's actually on. But that line, being siblings meant nothing if there was no actual relationship behind it. That's the thing people don't understand about family. The word brother or sister is just a title. It's not a bond. The bond comes from showing up, from caring, from actual relationship. You can share DNA with someone and be complete strangers if neither of you puts in the work. Bethany wanted the title to do the heavy lifting that the relationship never did. Final update. I found Lola through Bethany's Instagram. His last name was visible in a tagged post, and from there, I found his family's small landscaping business page. I sent a message introducing myself as Bethany's brother and said I wanted to discuss the loan situation. Lola agreed to meet me at a diner near his work on Wednesday. He seemed nervous, probably expecting me to ask for more time on the debt. Instead, I told him the truth. My parents had no way to repay that $15,000. The house they promised as collateral was worth less every month because of the foundation damage. They had no other assets and their retirement was nearly gone. Lola asked why I was telling him this. I said because his family deserved to know they were never getting that money back unless they acted fast. I explained that my parents were planning to string them along with promises while hoping I would bail them out. But I wasn't going to bail them out. I was done being their emergency fund. I told Lola his family should demand repayment immediately, in writing, before my parents found another way to delay. I said if they waited, they would lose everything they lent. Lola looked sick, but he thanked me for being honest. I knew what this meant for Bethany's relationship, but that wasn't my problem. She chose her side a long time ago. Okay, this is where the story takes a turn, and I know some of y'all are going to have feelings. He didn't just refuse to help. He actively armed the other side with information. He went to Lola and said, "My parents are going to string your family along. Demand the money now." That's not passive non-involvement. That's pulling a thread and watching the sweater unravel. Here's my read. Was it cold? Absolutely. Was it calculated? 100%. But was it wrong? That's where it gets complicated. Lola's family gave $15,000 based on lies. They deserve to know they were being played. OP didn't create this mess. His parents did when they borrowed money they couldn't repay. He just refused to be the secret solution they were counting on. Every action has consequences, and his parents spent decades believing their actions wouldn't have any. He proved them wrong. 2 weeks later, my parents showed up at my apartment. They didn't call ahead because I had been ignoring their messages. My mom was crying, and my dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. They said Lola's family had demanded full repayment within 30 days, or they would pursue legal action. They said Bethany and Lola broke up because his parents blamed her for the whole situation. They said the foundation damage was getting worse, and they couldn't afford any repairs now. My dad actually said they were sorry. He said they made mistakes and they needed their son. My mom said they were facing possible eviction if they couldn't fix the structural issues because the house might be condemned. I stood in my doorway and let them talk. I let them beg. I let them explain how desperate things had become. Then I reminded them of Christmas, when they said I was worthless and would just sell the house anyway. I reminded them of the shed comment, of the laughter, of 26 years of being treated like the backup child. My mom said they never meant those things, that it came out wrong, that they loved me. I asked why they never said that when they didn't need something from me. Neither of them had an answer. They never meant those things. Ma'am, you laughed. The whole family laughed. That's not a slip of the tongue. That's a reveal. People don't accidentally mock someone for 20 minutes at Christmas dinner. That was the real them, comfortable and unguarded, showing exactly how they saw their son. And now Dad says, we need our son? You had a son. You had him for 26 years. You just didn't want him until he was useful. That's not love. That's resource extraction with extra steps. Love doesn't show up only when the foundation is cracking. Love doesn't require an emergency to activate. They're not realizing they love him now. They're realizing they need him now. Those are completely different things. I told them I spent a year building a life where I didn't need their approval anymore. I told them they could sell the house, move into an apartment, get jobs, figure it out the way I had to figure out my own life when they gave my future to Bethany. I said I wasn't their son anymore. I was just the guy they threw away who happened to share their DNA. Then I shut the door. They knocked for 10 minutes before leaving. Bethany texted me later, calling me heartless. I blocked her. My parents lost the house 3 months later and moved into a rental. Bethany moved in with them since Lola's family wanted nothing to do with her. And me? I'm still with Ashley. Still getting promoted. Still building the life they said I wasn't capable of having. They called me worthless and I proved them wrong. That's the only closure I needed.